Hi, Angie here from Crafts at Home. Welcome back to this video series where I'm going to be featuring the art of quilting from Shape Artworks. Hopefully you'll have completed your first 11 blocks and have them stored ironed and flat ready for joining in later issues. With this issue we'll be making the Windmill sales block and you'll be receiving the daisy, lime gingham and turquoise gingham fabrics. Before you begin, iron all of your fabric so it's nice and flat. It will make it easier to work with and improve the overall finish of your quilt. Let's start marking and cutting. So I've gone and marked all 3 pieces of fabric now with the relevant templates and what was needed where. Good note with this one, I'll show you now, is I've already trimmed the top and the bottom of each of the rectangles because it made it a bit easier to actually do the marking, and also this is a frayable, very thin material. Same with this one really, it does fray and it is quite difficult to mark sometimes, so just take your time, make sure that you get your placement perfect. And also by trimming this one I've actually squared it up where all the cutting that was done previously was slightly off grain. So just by trimming the top and bottom and the side I've actually squared all of the gingham up just so it looks better on the actual square when it's finished. So to do your cutting I'll show you with the turquoise gingham. Just lay that down on your mat as you would. Take your cutting ruler or your sharp pair of scissors. Hold down under your blade and one long sweeping movement up. Take out your excess. Move across to your next line. Hold down. And just keep cutting until all your pieces are done. I'm going to carry on and also do the lime green gingham and the daisy. And I will be back with you for the pin and prep. So as you can see, I've laid out how the finished block will look when we're finished. And the first thing to do is you take away your turquoise squares and we'll add them back in later. Making sure that you've got every piece up the right way. You can also take off all these loose threads. Now the lime green gingham is a fabric that does fray easily, so you've got to be very careful when you're working with it. So your first thing to do, I do the outside triangles onto your daisy fabric first. So turn each one over one at a time, being careful because you are working along a bias edge again. Match up all of your corners and pin as usual at a 90-degree angle from the seam that you want to sew. So I've got the first one there. Again, working from the outside, turn in. Just make sure that you're working the same way each time. And it will keep it nice and neat as you're working. Don't pin both of these onto your daisy at the same time, because of the way that we need to sew. If you did both and sewed them, you wouldn't be able to iron open to then add the next piece properly. So we've got that piece done, and again outside in. Again, make sure that you match up your corners but not stretching your bias edge. And then finally outside edge in. Again, making sure you've got everything nice and neat, but not stretching your fabric. So what you should be left with is a pinwheel of your 4 lime gingham in the middle, and you've already taken your turquoise gingham to the side. So we'll just fold those on top of each other and put them to the side. And we're going to pop over to the sewing machine now and sew these all along the same edge. I'll see you over there in a moment. Welcome back. So I've got all of my sails pinned now. I'm just about to sew them with 6mm seam edge. So as usual, you lift your presser foot up. If you haven't marked them, then I've got a marking already on my sewing machine. Some people use a masking tape or sellotape where their 6mm or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is. Just start until you get to the first pin, take that out. One thing just to be aware of is making sure you don't go too quick, but also because you're working on the bias edge, you don't want to pull it as you're sewing. So just carry on off the edge and then pick your next one up. It's exactly the same for all 4. I've actually set the speed limiter on this machine so it won't go any faster than I actually want it to. And I've also got it set to foot down to finish, just so make sure that the needle's down and in the fabric when I lift the presser foot up. Again, next one in. look around and get my stitch saver and I'll pop that back under. And trim that off at the back. So I'm just going to snip all 4 of these windmills apart. I'm going to iron these open at the ironing board. I'll see you over there in a moment. Hi. So now I've sewn across those 4 edges there. We're going to iron them open. Now you're going to do it towards the green. So as usual, you do setting in first and then open. And do this for all 4 pieces. Right, so now we've got those all ironed open, we're going to attach the other segments. So making sure it's right side to right side again, flip over, making sure you've got your bias edges neat and tidy and everything matches. Pick that up and pin again along the bias edge that you're going to sew. Be careful not to stretch that fabric. So again, right side to right side, flip over. Make sure that everything is sitting really nicely. Again, you will find with this fabric, the gingham, you're always making sure you're taking pieces off because it frays quite a lot. So just make sure that you're tidying up your fabric as you go. And then do the last piece. And there we go. Now I'm going to look at which way I'm going to sew. Normally you'd sew sewing machine here, fabric that side, which means you've got quite a difficult seam to actually thread in to your machine to start with, so there is a chance of it clogging up. I'm going to switch all pieces over and go from that corner there, just so when I get down here, the natural flow of the way that the sewing machine sandwiches everything together and feeds it through, this will take it all down nicely. I'm going to turn all of them over and go through from that way. I'm going to pop and do these 4 seams and I'll see you back here in a moment. So now we've got all 4 pieces with both lime gingham attached. We're just going to iron these open. Again, iron towards the lime. So just take that out and iron open. Going to repeat for all 4. Just make sure that they're all nice and flat, the sharp seams. Now we're going to bring the turquoise gingham back in and we're going to attach these on. Now if you do it, you stand with the points facing away from you, fold the fabric of the gingham down, and then you pin on that top side, so that where your pins are and where your seam is going to meet with the top edge of the triangle. Now I'm actually going to pin it this way, so I'm sewing on this side and I can make sure then that my seams lie nice and flat as they're passing through the machine. So just pin in each side. What I will do in the middle, I'm going to step it down so it's just through 2 pieces of fabric and not through the bulk at the top. I'm going to do that for the rest of them. Again, right sides together. And then step down the middle. There is a right side and a wrong side to these. It's very subtle. That's why I've just checked there, just to make sure that I have got the right side on each one. Just make sure each time that you are pinning on that top triangle edge. Put the final ones together. There we go. Another tip as well, as you're sewing, you'll see on this side, take that one out, where the two crosses of the threads go is where the point of that red triangle is. So if you want to be sure that you've got a nice sharp point to your triangle, when you're sewing, make sure you go where the thread crosses. It should do. If you've got all of your 6mm seam allowances right and you've got all your cutting right, then it should be spot on, but that's just a hint, just in case something's a little bit off, to make sure you get that point. So now I've got all 4 of those pinned. I'm going to pop over to the sewing machine and sew them, and I'll be back in a moment. So as you can see, I've ironed across the top edge of all 4 of these now. Now I have double checked all of them, and I have got a nice red point where it meets the turquoise. So you want to iron towards the turquoise. So I'll just move those out of the way. Set the seam as normal. And then iron open. This is where you'll really start to see the block come together now. Okay, so now you want to place all of your triangles as you see and as you place them at the beginning. As you can see, we are really close to finishing. So your next job is to form the 4 triangles into 2 rectangles. So take one end and fold down, just match up. It's worth making sure, working on the inner points, which is where your triangles are going to meet. Pop a pin there and then work out. Now you've got the folded seam there, so you've got to make sure that's going the right way. And because that is one flat fabric there, I'm going to sew from that side so I can make sure that all the seams lie flat. Fold this one down. Again, go to the middle seam first, pin there. And then work out. Now I'm going to do exactly the same on this side, because this is the side where you've got more seams. I'm going to sew on that side. Okay, so I'm just going to sew these 2 seams and I'll be back in a moment. So now those 2 seams have been sewn, we need to iron them open. Now the best way to do that is have them with that triangle that you've just sewn face down, so you're looking at the 2 rectangles on top. And you want to set your seam and iron towards that. The reason we're doing that is so that red triangle will actually lie flat all the way through, so it's not actually bent up because it's a slightly thicker material. That's that one done. And we'll do exactly the same here again. Just making sure that everything is nice and flat. So now you want to make sure that you're putting them back together properly with the red triangles to the middle and the turquoise to the outside. If you do it the other way round, you'll see it doesn't look right. So just take your time to put it together properly. Flip this one over. Now you'll notice, because of the way that you've done those, you've got a nesting seam. It is a very thick seam, so just be aware of that. Might be an idea to pin either side of it and not through the middle. Now I'm just going to place them together and pin, and then I'm just going to do something to see how my placing is, because you've got the two triangles that are meeting in the middle there, point to point, but because it's so thick you can't really see. So I'm going to lie it down once I've put the first two pins in, and you will see you've got a seam running up there and a seam going across. So where those meet, if you put a pin through the other side, it's quite difficult to get through all of them, but that pin should meet where you've got the two going through that way. And mine is spot on, which is good news. So I'm just going to pin to edge. And the other edge. Now when you're running through the machine, whichever way you do it, it'll be the same. So just make sure that when you get to that seam at the back there, it's just running the right way through the sewing machine. So I'm just going to pop and sew this, and I'll be back in a moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is open it up and just double check along that middle seam, and I've got everything pretty much central. Just a couple of slight threads off, which is okay. So you set the seam on this. Now it is a bulky middle seam, especially around that centre area. So we're going to iron them open just with the nose of the iron. Just make sure you spread it out evenly. That is a really bulky seam in the middle, so I'm going to go up as far as there, turn round, open it up with my fingers again. Just be really careful when you're doing this that you don't actually catch your fingers with the iron. I've done that a few times and yeah, it hurts. Just make sure you gently press that before steaming. There we go. I always like to give a bit of a steam just to make sure that everything lies really flat and sharp. Make sure that everything else is all pointing the right way. And there we go, that is block 13 completed. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and the block that we've created. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you'll be notified of our new videos. Further information about Crafts at Home Forum, the Art of Quilting and Shape Artworks can be found on the social media pages which are listed in the description. Don't forget to join us next week for issue 14 where we'll be making the more complicated Basket of Flowers block. Bye for now.